morning, guys, ladies. Welcome to the hospital. Are you all ready? Okay. How do you feel? You know, the practice of history, who became directors of research and one led the conference last year, where they went across America to go after playwright advocacy, so it's not to pregnancy centers, do apologetics, have conversations about pro-life and abortion, and this is powerful. Abby, Harry, oh, I think I think I look like them, but yeah, maybe I thought you were here. She wants me to be with that, but if you're about the bullshit, if you're feel safe, I feel that it's well. But it's not, okay? Biblical justice. Now, this is life is justice. That's not a secret. That's every person wants to put their life to a good cause. Something in their heart is like, I want to do something about it. If you look at Muslims' mobilization, you know, there's some walking away, that, we try not to for a task. We're like, if this Muslim organization going after trafficking, sign me up. Let the task is enough. They need to know what is the do about it. Like, if you don't have a practical pathway, don't see me. So there's something in our view of like, that's the cause. But also, what I can do about it. Now, pay for all the teachers for people to learn how to talk. In an hour and a half, it's a free stop. Or like a very much free stop to get it. It's the education of the correct. It's the justice. Stop on whether the high school justice is not biblical justice. So, here's the first thing that you can look at. But I'm not going to say, justice is a word that is based on representation. It's not a framework of all people need to know. How can you define it? Like, what is a social justice movement like Black Lives Matter? For example, it's not biblical. Let's talk about what is the end. What are the ideas behind social justice? Now, I think there's a lot of different cases of social justice. Because there's quickly, we want to get Christians to be popular and unfair spaces for the Christian. That's the reason. So it's a pattern. I can work it out now. Now, even my boss likes this. What do you think? What's the idea? I'll do something. It's a great thing in the Christian state. either all about the family, to the person of the or all about him and holiness to the God. I was supposed to be confident and Lord, because God. My apologies to the faculty. Okay, and there's all kinds of ideologies that are in the God. That's the thing that brings God and objective answers. The foundation of God's sons is righteousness, one person, according to God's own law, with God the Father to by man, and justice. Terry would have really weird and watching this. It's going to be that is so when we want people, and when we say that, people out there, anytime you come thinking about lessons, we got to do that. They might be very loud to judge our positions. And the person is like, well, I don't think you can talk, because I feel like you're going to take me away from my faith. You can feel my faith. And not to talk about it, because you do. That's it. If you don't think you're going to or you don't think you're going to I don't want to be too political. I want to That's right. What is the favorite decision? I can't really go for the but I keep up with the how open your journey is. I can wait for it. That's the time to work. I can to even come in and say that the Bible and other songs that used to make the voice. We need to track those by a pure African, and particularly by a circumstance that maybe there's a black man, longs and outreach by a white dude, to have older brothers. A law in our kingdom is to be openly black, and that's the law of grace and nothing. What good is the truth? He was God all things in the prayer of wisdom reflects this level to the Lord. There is effective way that a problem is going to happen if it is got to break through. I want to ask you this. We talked about this. The enemy deals with people at the fruit of our thoughts. Don't sacrifice. Doesn't just drop the faith. It's the faith. At the root of every injustice is it's how the enemy begins to appear as good. Not abortion. It's a lot. It has to tell you so much deception. We want to hear our preaching about the Father of the but churches are recognized for leadership. They're giving abortion and constitutional rights. And only the 90% of the problem are using us to actually win the top win the power. Okay? We're all the way on. There's distance, which is based on I'm not looking at cases and like, I have to have it and say that. It's deception. It's good. Deception is right to recognize the things that we're in the future which celebrates a lot of celebrations. That's going to be mostly important today. This is a powerful quote I read. It says, according to biblical worldview, people are children that are functioning in this divine image. According to secular social justice, we are children of society, fashioned by its basic concept, construction, and the power dynamics that we can. I'll come back to that in the next hour. I want to say this. The fact that men and women are made to God. That gives you, in turn, value and dignity. These are the things. Because I put a non-atheist when it comes to healing and action. You both have to take value in both. There could be a criminal. We still have to take value in both. They carry the image of God. Which is why, we said this yesterday, the Christian biblical word is only worldview. Where both men and women are in the image of God. There's no worldview that a woman carries in the heart, which assigns incredible dignity, incredible worth, incredible value. They're equal in worth and value and biblically worthy. Okay? So, that's our foundation. It's fascinating when an atheist goes a human rights movement. Yeah. They don't believe this. They believe we are a product of evolution. Does that make sense? They believe in survival of the fittest. Going after the rights of the universe, particularly, or the rights movement. Now, I'm sure there's something in this that believes that there's a polarization. However, it's so inconsistent. Why is it right? Human rights could benefit the direction. Men and women, humans are different. Humans are worth. Humans are value. Why? Why? I mean, there's a path, there's a great part of evolution, survival of the fittest, the best of traits that you don't make it, you don't make it. If you're a reaper of whatever cultural background, but that's not. It does not make sense for atheists to defend the human life. The question would be, maybe you're not atheist, or you're protecting your nation. Maybe you're different. Okay? Yeah. But you can't say, why would you constitutional? Why would you support standard activity? Yes, there's something deeper in worldview in the direction of God. Social justice. Right? So it's a fact. Okay? That the social justice is the outstanding going to. Without going to that moment. What is this? I think this is correct, but I want to tell you, particularly with justice. What does that mean? It means that What happened in that picture right now? Why is the better reaction? Now, this guy was a part of that. That's the difference. He should be engaged. Also engaged with our actual experience. It's so important. Okay? We need to show that. When we begin to have these people in the face of injustice, when we begin to become what we become, we need to show that more than routine going on here. Because we can go in there and look at someone like a two-family relationship, but they both have to go out and talk about it. The way they have to go out is totally different than the people get drunk. Okay? And what you're talking about is it's a different place. A lot of us can be better because we should recognize that we need this thing from a human connection of the human. We have to say that we go to favorite book is what you call the last of the message. But meanwhile, we do the same thing all the time. That really is the same thing. That will be the same about us. See, this now, we can put something there. You can't, and you, of course, you have to do this. And so, I want to get you to answer. What is justice and why do you want it? And what do you do? What is injustice? And the more we ask those questions, the more our places will be told how they impact them with the things we don't. The conversation. Good. So, secular justice, I'm going to break down a little bit about secular justice and propose a concept. We keep it simple, but I will say this. How many of you watch the culture, let me say here, what's what's reflected is not outside culture. And a lot of people, when you study the word here, they don't seem to find who is the person and who is the victim. Pretty clear about it. When you talk about the people, someone has to be the person and someone has to be the victim. Feminism. Women are the victim in a lot of our thinking of white, male, Christian men. It's that some of those pictures that become a person and they need to find the victim. It's a hero someday. It's a lot of people's minds, and we're not going to unpack it. It's not just that open. That's what it is. It's very honest. But that's the background to the person, for example, a person just the victim. It's a 100% here on the people of the country. That's a really sad way to think. Someone failed the person, someone is the victim. Okay? What is here with a lot of second countries will say, again, people out of the country, as a white, now, you that's what they do. Not the people. But that's what a lot of social justice is actually raising. It's always the text, the written one. It's just basic truth. Not because there's something wrong. It's because it's wrong. What is this? That who can do it? Who's recognized? Like all the people as well. people around you and parents who you want my parents are like the person and learn to get tested everything around is now perfect because they again got the other. Right? So you can tell me like color and you can okay. There's a look. And one thing, what you say. Okay, why do you keep talking about you? God, we have to keep don't overthrow systems in our very political systems. We want to create a society living in our places like John Wolfsen tomorrow. That's going to support a society is raised in the body and adopt the change. Much more effective. Now, what is it? Okay, what's justice? We're doing it to look at the things. Now, two words of people, one is wisdom and charity. Wisdom is justice, like giving people what they do. And if you get them right, the punishment of these corrected moms will secure because you is innocent. Now, it is so true. Like if murder is wrong, and someone murders, it's not justice makes them happen. And it's how to protect the society. So, there always has to be a moral law to protect justice. One time, one law, there can be justice to protect the society. The other one, righteousness, and often the good news. There's a lot of times in Jesus, the word justice is translated as righteousness and justice. It's really one word. Because the justice of God is truth and a biblical framework for us to see justice. There is no justice against the truth. That's why abortion is so great in our life. Because what's the truth here? Doesn't matter whatever the law proves. Well, 24 weeks, 25 weeks, where you draw the line, I don't know. Well, what was the child ever to justice? We have no truth. It's all up to God. When it's all subjective, fill in the blank. So typical justice, right? Acting rightly is full and good. And often a real responsibility is available, widows working for grief and the poor. It's here. I'm 6 years old. The Bible tells us that we have given to God to act justly, to work most to make family with God. The blood of biblical justice, all extreme justice, is both truth and compassion. With compassion, it leads to suffering with God. Can we do that? It's just suffering with people. The book of Ruth is full of compassion. Hey, everything is law between us and God. It's very law. It's very weak. Because it's compassion that deeply. Can we see the goodness? Can we see the goodness? Can we see the blessings of people? Can we see it with a woman of empathy? That was we have to die. And we have to forget it. That was this. And the righteousness of God. That God only is able to hold the judgment of the wicked. And I was very interested in what I could do. It's just with two places. It's really clear things that we both fully recognize. Okay, taking all this, I look at you thoughts and why are you testing me? How do you take the way to make this thing? That's what you're saying. God is justice. Matthew 25, whatever you've done to the least of these, you have done to God and heal the God's connection with his ghost and peace. And there you have this. What's the song? What was the penalty for the youth? You didn't get it. You are now facing justice. That's the penalty. And it is a great deal of justice. Now, do you think it's a good thing? What's justice? I don't know. So this is our most important place. Or, it's just the court. The formal court, chief government of the law, and the city of the and second thing is just the truth of the change that we have to have. It's just a change. It's not just a great one. We also have to take it into consideration. It's a very complex. A lot of people just want to do it. A lot of people think it's not. But really, that's what they think it's not. So what they're doing is they do nothing to the life of the community. So that's why we've got to do things. The two things form. We've got to do it. Truth and compassion. And the truth and compassion. Now, the question obviously is that life can be created to create results. So we want to bring. We don't want people to speak. and somehow it's not stupid, it can very offended, but it doesn't make it sense. While I'm not here to communicate the clear, it's really good to be very young. And I think the more you want to make the change, the quicker it happens. Instead of the happiness, it's kind of happen. Now, I'm not going to go to use some of these movies to correct the change to the other. Guess what? You're going to have to with the city justice. I can't now see out of the time of the men and the old people. You're a king fighting. Say the fact. I've never seen someone look at that sexual justice because it's not the case. When they're seeing something something. You can't just live out in the it's charity. And really, it's to be what I'm saying. I think most of these things I don't know where to go. The God has the rejection and we're going to look at what it says. Why is it so? Why is it so? I want to go back into a different way. I want to touch it with them. I don't know if it's going to be a very different answer. But I want to keep it clear. What was your I'm not going to say anything like anything that you can see. It doesn't matter. I don't know. I don't think it's always wrong, but I think what you should be looking at is like, I'm just not going to all my people. I feel asleep. I'm not doing that kind of thing before I sleep. It's not real. It's not a people saying anything. And it's not a people saying anything. That is something. It's not one. I'm not measuring the way. I'm not how people have you actually. Actually, I remember that last year. I was not one of them. Now, you can also have the belief that you feel like, well, I don't feel like the way you speak. I think I was really like the way you speak. No one can do that. But I think I need to know that. Not really. I just know that people are very broken. I just don't think that's right. That can be stuff. But I'm sorry I'm probably something to say. But you just do it time. And you just do that for 3 weeks. Invite you to your home, and then it'll all be like choosing something like that. So you take a one-on-one conversation, you've got to get choice. Especially if you want to bring more people. So I don't feel the pressure to bring them back in one conversation. I'm sick of it, try to bring them together. But I want to enable them to talk to anything. You can have a passion. That's the difference. what basically wants is how to change music empathy. Right now, thank you for coming back to this. So we're like, BLM is wrong, you're wrong, it's demonic, stay away from it. Somehow we've got to listen to the honesty things. You know, like, because what is Christians to take their feet and church? We're all Christians. The younger Christians, we're the left side. So, that's my point. How do you talk to someone who is in that as suicide? Let's do it in America. Okay? I'll catch this video with you. And I would always say, if I'm part of the group, maybe stick with that. Let me say something. Keep on blurring on the way. Now, this is what true. And I don't know, it might be real, right? But it's true. I thought the food is what the people who talk about the picture was for food and they also have a lot of stuff. I'm like, oh wow. That's that picture. And I'm like, I didn't say it directly. They have to overcome it and their own people. Like, I put that energy, this is wrong, this is wrong, to get real future. We're all thinking, oh, it's the same country. Now, the two people, someone that's going to do some lyrics, and they get on that to be real, and this guy's actually testing it. And they recognize these things that people who can do this man dominating over them. What do you do? How do you listen? How do you come and listen? If you're representing a group that's with them, that's an island from you, and maybe over time, I have to fear that energy you feel, man, what I'm going to do is I'll hear you this so much. Let's gather a group of Christians to hear from you. So I'm helping them keep that energy to run towards that deep solution that they can take to their church. With that, you get the particular situation. So I want to hear what's the right way. What can we do to start? This is on this one. Don't always say language. What do you do with that? This strong. And they see the vulnerable. Right? They see down what's the vulnerable. And I think the same thing. Sit with that. Help you see what you need to do. Now, that's not easy. It's all the time. Curiosity, that's a lot of something. That's recognizing that as a person. Because it's just a need to watch the future. Or else you would be the kind of people. Yes. Good question. Yes. You know what I mean? It's a loop because the food has much of a point. But in Europe, it's very much so everyone has a solution. It's how to do it. This is very simple. You also know I have a practice to walk in the situation. It's free. It's a lot of your things that I'm still about in the same way. So, it's a good question. I think it's wisdom. I say this. I think it's wisdom. It's the same God works. Now, it's wisdom. It's here to ask is wisdom. And I'm a college grace, you know. But there also is this data and facts behind the fact that the women's outside of life is not innocent. So you're not coming up with that because of who men are stories and data and facts. So, don't let that kind of like reality to consider wisdom. I don't think that is well. Okay? Significantly, I highly feel like something happening to you rather than already off the street. Okay, so I think we can be okay with the reality of that. I don't think you have to prove it. So it's like if I just saw a girl attack together, and I did it, and it was someone from my culture, it does something to you, okay? And you're a guy by yourself, I don't think you can be afraid by other races, you just want to work through it too. And pray through that a bit, okay? So, I think we can explain, let's say, you have employee revenue type plan, it doesn't matter. When it comes to overpay, it's like when it comes to water. The trauma and fear is a disconnect from what you're doing. So that's when you start. If you're walking to the bathroom and there's 3 more walking up, and you're like, keep it stuff. Don't think straight. Oh my gosh, and tonight you can run. It's a little illogical. I think on the surface, in daytime, with 3 people, they're probably interested. But also, when walking goes out the window, it could be a trauma response that over time can put into I don't know for all kind of way. Alright. I hope this lasts. I hope this makes sense. I just feel like it's learning a bit. I think it's quite complex. I like how the culture, justice, what is justice. So, there is a sense of into the day. Okay, because I also want to connect to a really key topic of justice. And obviously, who is very and fairly communicated. I think great time, biblical culture, justice, the grounding of what's happening. There is a lot of faith and solution that is not the business of the business life. So, this is a powerful thing. I'm glad to hear. And let's take a look. I'll be here for this question.
This is your brain when you're struggling to focus. And this is your brain when you're in the zone. But
before we go back to you,
Looking for tax help? Now there are TurboTax experts right in your neighborhood.
Paljon onnea vaan, paljon onnea vaan, paljon onnea Nalle, paljon onnea vaan, paljon onnea vaan, paljon onnea vaan, paljon onnea Nalle, paljon onnea vaan.
God, thank you so much for Jerry. Thank you so much for him being part of Frontlines this year, God. We are so blessed to have him here. We ask and we declare blessings over his life, God. 34 years old in your presence, God, and we declare that 34 more is soaked in your presence, God. So we declare this year being a very special year in his life, God, where he's going to find friends not to do things, but just to have a deep relationship with each other and with you, God. In Jesus' name, we bless Jerry today, and we declare a special blessing over his life. In Jesus' name, amen. We love you. Now back to Esther.
All right, we're just gonna get going with the next session. Jolien has to go speak in Fire and Fragrance for the next hour, so she needs to leave. But she'll be with us tomorrow, and then with the Maternal Hospital on Friday. So yeah, Jolien did a great job introducing Aaron, but also his wife is Barbara, and two little kids, Elias and Ziki, are the cutest little kids ever. And Aaron's sister Olivia is one of my closest friends. So, here's Aaron.
What's up, Frontlines and Life Bearers? Awesome. So how many are Frontlines? Raise your hands. Sweet. Nice. And then all the Life Bearers is everyone else. Raise your hands, too. Yeah. So yeah, my name is Aaron. Last year, I helped to lead the Frontlines school, and then me and my wife, we led an outreach focused on abortion. And so I'll tell a little bit of the backstory of how we ended up doing that. But the kind of the scope of that outreach was we had a small team. We had 4 students with us, and we went to 8 states in 10 weeks, all of those states being ones where abortion is legal through all 9 months of pregnancy with no restrictions. If you didn't know that, yeah, there are 8 states, including Washington, D.C., where that is the case in our nation. So we went to Portland, Oregon. We went to Sacramento, California, Denver, Colorado, Minneapolis, Burlington, Vermont, New Jersey, and Washington, D.C. So it was crazy. With is that home for were any of those people's homes? Where are you from? Colorado. Okay. Wow. Where are you from? Okay. Wow. Both. Was there one more? Yeah. Where are you from? Portland. Oh, Portland was crazy. Over here, Sacramento. We loved Sacramento. It was awesome. One other one, Bethany, New Jersey. Yeah. It was crazy with the with our 2 boys. They were 2 and just under 1 years old. So it was awesome. We were just on the move. We were going. But our goal for the outreach was to stand and pray outside of Planned Parenthoods mainly. Pray at Capitol buildings, praying for laws to change, praying for justice. We called the whole tour Justice for the Unborn. And we served some pregnancy centers along the way. That kind of like opened opened the door for us kind of in that realm a little bit, seeing how those function. We stood at college campuses with some fairly graphic signs. Sometimes the signs said like, when does life begin, or something a little less inflammatory. Sometimes the sign had it like, I liked holding the ones that were a little bit more confrontational, because I like having those conversations. But we had one with a picture of an aborted baby, and it said essentially like, America must repent for the sin of abortion. So we did this whole outreach tour, and then I guess, what we're doing now is we are serving as directors of Live Pregnancy Center in Hilo. A bunch of the Life Bearers girls went on Friday last week to have a prayer and worship night with us. But that is something that we would have never imagined doing. That was not in our scope of it wasn't a goal or anything we could have imagined doing going into our outreach last April. But then it was in June when we were kind of halfway through that Kyle and Corey, who are the directors of the island, they called us to ask to pray about going to leader. And I'll share a little bit more about our process of realizing that was the Lord. But I do want to get into kind of talking about abortion. How many people in here would say that abortion is like a burden on your heart, and it's something that you've looked into a lot, watched debates, that kind of thing? It's definitely the Life Bearers girls, some more. So this kind of is a fresh, not that fresh for me, maybe a few years old, where I had started watching some of the debates, some of the, watching the conversations of people who were standing with signs on campuses and stuff like that, and seeing, and then looking at some of the statistics. It was around the time of the last presidential election. I was essentially looking at the positions of the left. I was looking at what is Kamala Harris running on, what is Tim Walz, who's this guy from Minnesota, and I found that Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota, had just passed the year prior the protection for abortion rights through all 9 months of pregnancy in the state of Minnesota, and celebrated it as this huge victory, like, you will be able to kill your baby for any reason at any time whatsoever until the moment they're born. And I was kind of talking with my brother. He went to school in Boston, so he went fairly liberal after growing up in a Christian home, and he's a very anti-Trumper. I have a lot of issues with Trump as well, but he gets very, very angry about Donald Trump. And so we were talking, leading up to the election, and I was like, I could never, ever put my vote to someone who I know, loves abortion, who, their whole running point is abortion. So I'm having this conversation with him for, hours. We went until probably, 3 in the morning, where I'm sitting on the couch, explaining to him why abortion hurts the heart of God. And, just the way that I was explaining it to him, I felt like God was giving me kind of new insight while I was trying to explain and paint the picture for my brother, who I love, who calls himself a Christian, why this is such an evil thing. And essentially get to the end of the conversation, and he's like, I mean, yeah, you can think that, but you can't, make laws to control women's bodies. That's how the conversation ends after, 5 hours. And, that moment, I just, started crying, because, one, it was hard. Sorry. It was hard to see my brother that I love so much, land on that after me pouring out my heart. But I felt a burden, I have to do something about this now. And that leads me to what I was going to say is pay attention to what makes you cry. I heard someone say, I don't remember where it was, but the reason why you cry about something is because that's a burden that God has put on your heart. You can't force yourself to have a burden for lost souls or have a burden for this or that. You kind of just get what God gives you and pay attention to that, because that is most likely tied to your destiny and to your assignment and what God wants you to be doing. So I finished this conversation with my brother, I have to do something about this. I can't just have this stance and have this burden and do nothing. So we were gearing up to lead Frontlines. This was June of 2024, I want to say. Frontlines started in January of 2025. And so I talked to Jolien. I was like, we should do an outreach specifically focused on abortion. And I think me and Barbara want to lead it. I don't know what it looks like or what. And so that's what we came up with, is going to the states that were the most progressive, had the laws protecting abortion through all moments of pregnancy. And we just started preparing. We announced it to the school that this is what we were going to be doing, and got the team and found the contacts and did the thing. Neither of us, me or my wife, had ever stood and had a conversation with someone about abortion. We had never stood at a Capitol building to pray about abortion. We had never done any of that. She had served a little bit at Live throughout our years here in Kona, but it was basically a new thing, brand new thing for us. And so that's how we kind of came into what we're doing right now. But I do want to just paint this picture about abortion and talk about some statistics, talk about how did we get here as a country, as really in our world, as a culture. And the craziest thing to me right now in our modern times is that abortion is considered simply a political issue. If you talk about abortion, some people say, I'm not too political. I don't have an opinion about abortion. That is honestly crazy to me, because what is so clear is that abortion is a spiritual issue. It's an issue of the image of God on earth and the attack on the image of God on earth. What is clear since the beginning, when we read in Genesis, God's first command to mankind essentially was be fruitful and multiply. Fill the earth with my image because it is beautiful, because it's my plan, because I love it. And what we see immediately is Satan's agenda is to kill, steal, and destroy, to blot out the image of God on earth, to pervert it, dilute it, to mess it all up, and he does that because he hates God. Satan hates God, and therefore he hates the image of God. This is like the foundation of the spiritual issue of abortion, is that there is an enemy whose job is to kill, steal, and destroy, and he's going to take it out. He can't obviously touch God, so he's going to destroy his image. And then the most vulnerable image bearers of God are unborn babies, are precious infants who can't defend themselves, who don't have a voice to stand up for themselves, who have very little. My wife and son. Do you want to come in? Oh, you need the keys. Sorry. I think it's back there on the table. I don't have it. In 1 John chapter 3, it says, anyone who practices living in sin essentially is of the devil, because the devil has been sinning from the beginning, and from the beginning this has been his agenda, to wipe out the image of God on earth. If you go on the internet and you look up every leading cause of death in the world, or any cause of death, usually in the world 65 million people die every single year for every cause, sickness, disease, war, whatever, starvation, 65 million, old age. The abortion number in the world every single year is roughly 73 million. And like WHO, CDC, they don't count it as a cause of death, but obviously we know that is a cause of death. So it overwhelmingly outnumbers every cause of death in the world combined every single year. So it's not just an issue in America. I would say modest estimates for abortion in America is about 1 million per year. I have this statistic from Guttmacher Institute. It says an estimated 1,038,000 abortions were provided by clinicians in states without total bans in 2024. These numbers represent an undercount of the total number of abortions occurring in the United States, as they do not include abortion pills mailed by clinicians under the protection of shield laws to individuals residing in states with total abortion bans. For example, a state like Texas, a girl can order an abortion pill in the mail and have an abortion. Those are not recorded in this statistic of over 1 million. They also do not include data on self-managed abortions, including abortion pills obtained from community support networks or websites. So literally some college campuses just have like a group you can go to, and they have a stockpile of abortion pills, and they'll just give you one kind of like willy-nilly. They're not nurses, they're not doctors, they just have a stash, and if you need one, come get one. And so I would say maybe a closer estimate would be something like 1.5 million abortions per year in America, which is insane. Do you know how many babies are born in America every year? It's usually like 3 million live births in America every year. And so if, let's say, with a modest estimate, 1 million abortions, you're talking about 25% of an entire year's worth of babies. 25% of your generation was aborted. And then right now, 63% of those are happening by abortion pill. So essentially just being flushed down the toilet as a woman just like bleeds in her bathroom by herself after taking an abortion pill. In the world, that 73 million, still probably a modest estimate. 6 out of 10 unintended pregnancies end in abortion. So that's like 60% of all unintended pregnancies. And then in total, 3 out of 10 pregnancies end in induced abortion. So 30% of the world's population every year is is aborted. So this is clearly the most effective tactic of Satan to destroy the image of God on earth. Like, there is nothing else that comes close to just pure death count. There, like, maybe the argument can be made for he causes suffering in more ways than this. And obviously we look at suffering as injustice. People who are stuck in sex trafficking, they're suffering. People who are, so poor that they can't eat, they're suffering. These are injustices that we should be focused on. But my personal opinion is that abortion is the greatest injustice against humankind that is imaginable. The thing with the abortion pill, and so this has quickly become over the past 10 years the leading method of abortion. Does everyone know kind of the different stages of pregnancy? There's different methods of abortion. Has anybody watched any animated videos of how these things go down by a raise of hands? Okay, so a lot of you, that's good. I think if you feel a burden for this or want to have these conversations, it is important to educate yourself. And there's a lot of resources that you can find on liveaction.org, and they have these videos that basically show us what does it look like when the abortion pill is taken. What does it look like after 12 weeks when another one of the methods is essentially like suction, where they'll just stick kind of a vacuum up there and suck out the baby. After 16 weeks, so maybe 16 to 20 weeks, they actually have to go in and with instruments and rip the baby limb from limb, and then suck it out and scrape inside to make sure none of the pieces are left behind, and reassemble them on the metal tray next to the table to make sure they got all the pieces. And then the latest, third trimester abortions require a lethal injection into the baby to kill it, and then it also is disassembled. This is graphic, but we have to talk about this, I think, to really understand the issue that we're facing. Usually the skull of the baby, it won't pass through the cervix, so it has to be crushed and pulled out. And so one verse that really is heavy on my heart is Proverbs 36, and it says, cry out for justice for those, so essentially raise your voice for the voiceless and demand justice for those who are being crushed. And this is like a metaphorical term usually, justice for those being crushed, the crushing power of oppression or whatever. These are literally human beings being crushed to death. And so that's kind of just a little bit about how these procedures go down. And most people who are for abortion, who would consider themselves pro-choice, they don't know these things. They think, it's literally painted. The picture that's painted for our culture is that, and what it says, if you go and read about abortion on the World Health Organization or CDC, it says a fairly risk-free, simple procedure performed by a healthcare professional, and it's so sanitized, it's so diluted, it's so removed from the reality of the true horror of these operations that are happening, and the true injustice of it, I think, is that it is called healthcare and that it is considered a right. And the World Health Organization, they, in their articles of abortion, they talk about the methods of abortion and say human rights to be considered, and something like that. It never mentions the human rights of the human baby inside of the womb that is being ripped apart and removed. So that's where we are as a culture, which is insane. And so specifically about the abortion pill, it's kind of like the origination of the abortion pill. It's pretty shocking, but also not surprising. The pill itself the medical term is mifepristone, but the kind of like the business brand is RU486. So the letter RU486, and it can be fairly directly traced back. There was a chemical development company in the early 1900s in Germany called IG Farben, and they created the gas called Zyklon B, which is the cyanide gas that was pumped into the gas chambers to wipe out Jews in large numbers. When the war ended, this company, IG Farben, which was made up of smaller companies, one of those smaller companies is called Host. It's maybe someone who speaks German. Hoechst. How would you pronounce that? Hoechst AG. So it's actually like an agricultural company. It was part of IG Farben, creating the cyanide gas. They became the majority shareholder of a French pharmaceutical company called Roussel-Uclaf, which is RU. Roussel-Uclaf put its initials into its murderous drug it created called RU486 in 1980. And so this parent company, essentially, Hoechst AG, goes from creating gas to exterminate the Jews to creating pills to exterminate unborn babies, which is just like insane, but also like not that shocking. If you think about like the enemy has been sinning from the beginning. He hates the image of God, and like his tactics don't change. He's kill, steal, destroy, and so it's really not that surprising. But it's kind of also important to understand, like, how did we get here as a culture? How do we, like, specifically in America, but around the world too, how did we get to the point where abortion was federally legalized on a nationwide scale in 1973 with Roe versus Wade? The crazy thing is that 57 years before that, in 1916, abortion was a felony offense in every single state across the nation. In 1916, however, we meet a character named Margaret Sanger. She is eventually the founder of Planned Parenthood. In 1916, she opened a birth control clinic in Brooklyn, New York, and it was honestly like the first of its kind. Like, even birth control was illegal. And dispersing literature about birth control or abortion would be a criminal offense. But this lady, Margaret Sanger, she starts the birth control clinic in Brooklyn, New York in 1916. And this woman, if you look into her life, she was absolutely so evil. She was a blatant racist and eugenicist. So eugenics, do people know what eugenics is? So it's essentially like selective breeding. I'll read a few quotes here by Margaret Sanger. She basically would put out like articles in her magazine. I think it was Birth Control Federation of America or something like that. Here's one quote by her. There is every indication that feeble-mindedness in its protean forms is on the increase, that it has leaped the barriers, and that there is truly, as some of the scientific eugenicists have pointed out, a feeble-minded peril to the future generations. Unless the feeble-minded are prevented from reproducing their kind, every feeble-minded girl or woman of the hereditary type, especially of the moron class, should be segregated during the reproductive period. Otherwise, she is almost certain to bear imbecile children who in turn are just as certain to breed other defectives. So it's this idea that stupid people make stupid babies, and we should either, supply them birth control so they don't reproduce, or forcefully sterilize them so they are unable to reproduce, because they're a harm to society. And this was actually like kind of a popular idea back in the early 1900s, but it's like so demonic and so anti-human on every level. It completely rejects like the transformation power of God. Like, regardless of who your parents are, like, Jesus can come in, transform your life by the power of the Holy Spirit. We can be changed, made new, walking in righteousness and holiness, and be benefits to society, regardless of where we come from. I think that's what we all believe. But it basically just says, if you're dumb, you should be sterilized. This also, this idea of hers, also she applied to essentially like all of the African American community in America. She started something that was called the Negro Project, and I'll read some quotes from her about this Negro Project. She says, "The mass of Negroes, particularly in the South, still breed carelessly and disastrously, with the result that the increase among Negroes, even more than among whites, is from that portion of the population least intelligent and fit, and least able to rear children properly." So her and her partner's, grand plan was to provide birth control and abortion services to Negro populations, to the black community, to get into black neighborhoods and essentially sterilize as many of them as possible, so they don't reproduce and create more of their kind. Which it wasn't necessarily about the skin color, but just she thought they were stupider. They thought they were a lower class, which obviously is so evil. And she goes on to say, in a proposal to carry this out, she says, the Christian minister's work is also important, and also, Christian ministers, I'm missing my quote here. Her plan essentially was to include like bishops and church leaders. Here's the quote. Christian ministers' work is also important, and also he should be trained, perhaps by the Federation, as to our ideals and the goal that we hope to reach. We do not want word to go out that we want to exterminate the Negro population, and the minister is the man who can straighten out that idea if it ever occurs to any of their more rebellious members. So essentially, like, her plan was to include the bishops and like black doctors. So a black doctor would be the one who greets you when you walk into the clinic, so that your guard would go down and you don't think, oh, they're trying to exterminate us. This is a safe place. This is a place where people care about me and can relate to me. Therefore, I am going to take this birth control, sterilize myself, whatever it may be. This is like their master evil plan to reduce the amount of black babies being born in America, which was evil. Planned Parenthood, even to this day, places 86% of its abortion clinics in minority neighborhoods. A modern statistic from like 2020 to 21, 3.5% of the American population are black women of childbearing age. Yet 37 to 38% of all abortions are performed on black babies. So such a tiny percentage of the population, which are black females who can bear children, make up over a third of all abortions happening. In New York in 2019, there were more black pregnancies that ended in abortion than ended in live birth, over 50%. And so literally the least safe place for a black baby was in its mother's womb, which is like God created the mother's womb to be the safest place for the most vulnerable form of human being, the most vulnerable and helpless form of human being, bearers of his image, the place where they are entirely dependent. It's the only place that they can exist. And that's the argument of many pro-choicers is, they can't exist outside of the womb. It's like because they were created to exist inside of the womb. We can't exist at the bottom of the ocean because we weren't created to exist at the bottom of the ocean. Every single one of us, every single human, we may not have the same life experience, we may not have the same death experience, but one thing that we all have in common is that we started in our mother's womb, that we all had to be in the most vulnerable position for that duration of time to the point where we could actually be born and still be completely dependent on our mothers, by the way. And then the crazy thing is that Jesus decided to enter humanity in the womb of a woman. He decided, rather than to just like come in power from on high, he came in the most vulnerable form, therefore relating with us in our most vulnerable experience. He came in the womb of a woman. And then in the book of Luke, when Jesus is in Mary's womb and John the Baptist is in his mother's womb, Mary walks into the room with Elizabeth, and the John the Baptist in his fetal form jumps inside the womb of his mother, recognizing his Savior and Creator in the womb of another woman. And I say all of this to basically just like paint the picture is that like as Christians, we have there is no way that we can justify or say that abortion is good or that a baby in whatever week of gestation is not valuable and his life shouldn't be protected, because Jesus, our Savior, our God, came in that form. He was fully God and fully man in the womb of his mother, therefore being fully valuable, and so is every other baby. There are plenty of self-proclaimed Christians who say at some point in gestation, before viability or whatever, it is justifiable to have an abortion, to terminate pregnancy. But they never like to say what it truly is, killing a child. So yeah, those are just some staggering statistics. There have, however, throughout the years been victories in the fight for justice. Like, how do we, kind of like Jolien was talking about, what is justice in this situation? How do we see justice come about? How do we see just and righteous laws passed to protect the lives of unborn? So some victories that have been really monumental over the past few years is in 2022, Roe v. Wade was overturned. The unfortunate thing with the overturning of Roe v. Wade is it did not decrease by any means the amount of abortions happening in our country. Actually, the numbers the very next year went up after the overturning of Roe v. Wade, because what Roe v. Wade, the overturning did is it sent the responsibility back to the states. So each state can choose and pass laws for themselves in regards to protecting the lives of the unborn. And so what happens is, in a state like Texas, I'll use that as an example, every single abortion clinic in the state is closed down because it is now illegal for a clinician to perform an abortion on a woman. The problem is, like I mentioned before, is a woman can easily order an abortion pill in the mail and receive it and take it by herself with no guidance or supervision or anything, and flush her own baby down the toilet. So the fight right now, and then I'll say one more victory, is that in July of 2025, which felt like a huge victory for our team, our anti-abortion team, because we finished our tour in D.C. In June of 2025. 1 month later in July, the Congress passed a bill called the One Big Beautiful Bill, and what this bill basically did, it did a lot of things, which I don't know all the intricacies of it. However, it removed federal funding to Planned Parenthood and abortion clinics around the nation. So as a result of that, over 20 Planned Parenthood have closed across the country for lack of funding, and I think about 50 to 60 abortion clinics in total across the nation have closed as a result of just that funding being removed. Planned Parenthood was receiving $700 million every single year from the American government, from taxes that we pay, to reimburse them for Medicare services related to abortion, which is just insane. Is that like my money is going to the extermination of babies? I've been trying to fight this fight to protect them. It's just the most evil. So what the bill that was passed is essentially in the year removal of that funding. I don't know what's going to happen in July of this year, if that's going to be reinstated or if they're going to have to pass another bill or whatever. But that is a victory. The fact that abortion clinics are closed is a victory. The problem that we continue to face, though, is kind of I guess controversial. I don't think it should be controversial, but essentially the argument is one side identifies themselves as abortion abolitionists. Abolish abortion, but protect the unborn from murder, just like you protect the born from murder. Anyone who murders the unborn should be tried for the same as if they murdered a 1-year-old. So this is the abolitionist camp. And then there's, I guess, you could say the general pro-life camp. And this is just in regards to writing legislation, where people are hesitant to essentially convict mothers for taking abortion pills. There's like kind of the argument is we want to be sensitive to mothers so that we can actually help them. Women are very often coerced into having abortions, and so the mother is the victim in this abortion that took place. Which I totally understand, and there was a conference that my wife went to in Oahu. It was called Americans United for Life, and there was a lawmaker, a guy who basically writes laws for states to pass in regards to abortion, and he came to visit us at our Hilo clinic, and I brought this up to him about this distinction between abolitionists and pro-life, and when we're writing legislation, and so this is what he described to me, is that essentially, like, if we criminalize the mother, this is kind of like the terms they use, if we criminalize the mother for having an abortion, then at pregnancy centers, we kind of become like a sort of like investigative informant. Like if we think that someone is at risk of having an abortion or taking an abortion pill, we kind of have to report that. And so how could we then be an arm of support and embrace this vulnerable woman if we're actually like seeking to, throw her under the bus at the first thought that that she might have an abortion, which I totally understand that point of view. But one thing that I just can't get past is if there was a mother with a 1-year-old coming into our clinic and I thought she might kill her 1-year-old child, like, what would I do about that? Like, and so if we say abortion is murder, then we have to treat it as murder. And this is my opinion. You might have a different opinion. But, like, if there is no consequence for a mother killing her child, then how can there be a consequence for a man who slipped an abortion pill into his girlfriend's drink so that she would lose that pregnancy? How can we, does that make sense? Like, if we don't actually treat abortion as murder, then I don't think we'll ever see the ending of abortion in our nation or actually see laws passed to truly abolish abortion and to truly protect the unborn as in the same way that we would protect a born child. So this is kind of like the tension right now. Like just in the past few days, there was an opportunity in Iowa. Iowa is completely Republican majority, with like many of the House of Representatives and the senators and even the governor saying we will back down, or we will never back down from protecting the lives of the unborn. We will never shy away from the fact that we are pro-life and like literally saying like abortion is murder and we're going to protect the unborn at all costs. They just had an opportunity like yesterday to pass a bill that would completely abolish abortion in their state. And they would have been able to do it even if they didn't receive all of the Republican votes that they needed. Like this bill could have been passed through with just a portion of the Republican votes that they needed because they are a massive Republican majority. However, they did not pass the bill to essentially recognize unborn babies as to protect them the same way that they would protect born babies. So it's like, why not? I don't know the answer to that. I don't know what the strategy or the thought is behind those lawmakers and legislators and representatives or elected representatives. I don't know, but that is kind of the on a legal sense where we're at as a nation is like, even in an opportunity to actually abolish this evil, like there are people just kind of on board. They are totally on board for restricting the week that an abortion can be performed from 12 weeks to 6 weeks, or at the heartbeat, or whatever. Therefore, reducing the number of abortions, which I do think is a good thing. But like, when there's an opportunity to completely abolish abortion, and that is not taken, it does confuse me. And I honestly don't think we can ever have true justice until abortion is completely abolished. I don't think, like I said, I don't think that there can be, we can't live in the middle where some people can be held accountable and some people can't. But it's kind of this, like, it's a challenging thing because just passing a law, like we have laws against murder, people still murder people in this country. Just passing a law doesn't mean that everyone's going to follow that law. The abortion pill will then become some kind of contraband, which I think it should be. But it opens up this whole new realm of then we have to write new laws concerning other things concerning unborn babies. And so just passing the law doesn't change people's hearts, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Like, what we need to change people's hearts is, like, true revival. Like, we need people to come to saving faith in Jesus Christ, be filled with the Holy Spirit, and be given a new heart. Like, that is the only way that we can see true transformation. And so if we focus too much on this legal side, we're going to write laws that people just won't follow. And then we'll just have a nation of lawlessness and rebellion, and you know what I mean? Like, when they passed laws to illegalize alcohol in the 1920s or whenever that was, with Prohibition, like, a lot of people started making a lot of money smuggling alcohol, and everyone was still drinking. So it's like, we need revival to lead to reformation. Like, one without the other doesn't work. You can't really, in a full sense, see reformation until we see revival, until we see people's hearts truly changed. But what we can do, as far as it comes to abortion, I think it's very important to be prepared to have conversations with people. I think this is really a person-to-person conversation. This is like, we had hundreds and hundreds of conversations, either at in front of Planned Parenthoods or at college campuses, where it kind of felt like nothing was happening, and people are just kind of have their minds made up, and they just kind of believe whatever propaganda they subscribe to, and it felt like we couldn't change anybody's mind. But a really amazing testimony from our outreach was our very last day of ministry in Washington, D.C. We were standing with signs at the Lincoln Memorial, and we were like, okay, this is the last time we're going to go out, and then we're going to have our debrief, and that's it for outreach. And one of our students named Aiden, he was standing there with his sign, and this 17-year-old kid walked up to him. Aiden's sign had a kind of an animated image of a palm with an aborted baby on it. It said, "Abortion is a hate crime." And so this kid walks up to Aiden, and he's like, "What does that mean, like, abortion is a hate crime?" And so Aiden described like a hate crime is like a targeted attack on an individual because of their status or color or size or stage of development. So including those points in the definition of hate crime. And so they have this whole conversation, and this kid was like, oh, I believe in a woman's right to choose to do whatever she needs to do. And he shared with him that he was in D.C. with his dad because his mom had just passed away. And so Aiden, they have this probably like 15, 20-minute conversation, and Aiden finishes by asking if he can pray for the guy. And so he prays for him, and the guy, literally, right after he's done praying, he's like, thank you, man. I think you changed my mind. And it was like, we never heard anybody say that in the hundreds of conversations that we had across 8 states. And that was like the very last one. He's like, I think you changed my mind. And so like it is useful to have these conversations. It is important to inform people what's actually happening. It is important for people to see actually like the process of an abortion and understand what it is that they're supporting and fighting for when they say, women's right to choose. It's like, in my experience, whenever someone says, I support a woman's right to choose, and I ask them in response, choose to do what? Like, the obvious answer for me being, like, kill their own child in their womb because it's inconvenient. They say, choose to do whatever they want to do. It's like, okay, well, a woman can't choose to kill her 1-year-old, so that's obviously not your position. But their argument breaks down immediately as soon as you counter it with a follow-up question. Something that we can do is to serve and support the most vulnerable. So many of abortions are like the majority of abortions. The reason the woman has is that she's not financially stable and can't afford to have a baby, which honestly, like the root of that is a whole lie in our culture that says like babies cost $1 million a year, and if you can't afford a baby, kill it. But what we can do is serve and support the most vulnerable. I would love to believe that like women don't actually want to have an abortion. They're just doing what someone else told them is best for them, or what they have heard is best for them. And as soon as they have some support, so they're usually just like lonely, afraid, they don't even know who got them pregnant. As soon as they have some support and someone to speak truth and life over them, they will quickly change their mind. And then, stand on the front lines of this issue and never back down. Like, if this is something that's a burden on your heart, do something about it. You won't regret doing something about it. And ask the Lord specifically what that might be. Like, not everyone is like my wife Barbara. She's not very confrontational. She hated when I was in like a heated discussion with someone about this. Like, she would like literally walk away because she couldn't like handle it. But she is like the most amazing person to be at a pregnancy center every day with women walking in, not sure if they're going to keep their baby. You know what I mean? And like that real hands-on. So there's different parts of this fight. There's the prayer part. There's the kind of the front lines part where you're essentially, it feels like a little bit like you're going to war against the issue and trying to break the lies of the culture in the conversations. And then there's like the hands-on part of actually serving and supporting those women and babies. But yeah, that's what I have. I do want to just ask if like there's any questions. Yes. Yeah, that is a very good question, and one, it's usually the first question that comes up in the conversation of abortion. What about rape? and it's usually like the worst possible case scenario. What about a 12-year-old who was raped by her dad and is pregnant? Usually my immediate response just to that argument is we're talking about like 0.02% of all pregnancies that happen in America every year. So it's a very small number, but then it doesn't mean that it doesn't happen, and then it doesn't mean that it has to actually be dealt with compassion and love. What I would say is that abortion is never the answer to a rape. To have an abortion is like a traumatic experience, and so is to be raped a traumatic experience. One thing doesn't heal the other thing, and I think the only thing that can actually bring healing is the love of Christ, is to absolutely love and support whoever it was that has been raped, but also like not back down from the stance that like the solution is not to kill your child, because the statistics show that women who have had abortion have had an abortion within the next 10 years, like their rate of suicidality goes so high, emotional health crumbles, and it's not for every single woman. Some women completely thrive 10 years after having an abortion, but there's true like emotional turmoil that comes with having an abortion, and when you look at the stories of redemption of women who have been raped and chose to keep their baby, and then you see an adult human being whose testimony is that they were conceived in rape, and their mother chose to keep them, and they're obviously so glad that they weren't aborted, because they are a human being with value and purpose and created by God and loved by God. So like that, it's literally something that like that woman needs to be walked with through every single day of her pregnancy by someone who like loves her unconditionally and is supporting her like through everything. I would say other than a decision to have an abortion. And those redemption stories are the most powerful. Like we miss the redemption story when the reaction is abort. You didn't choose this, just get rid of it. You know what I mean? Like that's a solution to any of our problems in life. We miss the hand of God in our life. We become a God to ourselves, making our own decisions, and I think that generally doesn't lead to good consequences in our lives. So, just like a little bit different angles on approaching that issue. Yes. Yeah, that's like the second most no uterus, no opinion. I would say that it's crucial for men to stand up for this issue because every abortion, every pregnancy is a result of a man and a woman. Every man can identify and relate with the fact that we started in our mother's womb. I lived in a uterus for 9 months. I might never be able to, I don't have a uterus or could never conceive a child by myself, but a woman also can't conceive a child by herself. And so the lie that this is not a man's issue is just that. It's a lie. And we encountered a lot of men who say, I have no opinion. It's not my place to have an opinion. But then those are the same weak men who support their girlfriends when she says, I think I want to just have an abortion. I support whatever you want to do. This is a father of a child that's been conceived who is backing down and not standing for the life of his own child. So men need to be informed, understand that they do have, their opinion does matter, and that the moment that a baby is conceived, like the moment my first son was conceived, I became a father. If my wife had miscarried, I still would have been a father, but we lost our baby. You know what I mean? That didn't happen to us, but that's the reality of it, and that's how we have to see it. You know what I mean? Yeah. Yes. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, yeah. And like when we're confronted with these conversations, it's like sometimes your brain just shuts down. Honestly, like I don't know how to respond to that question. You get a little flustered. Like that's super normal. So to have a framework like that is super helpful to respond to questions. If you're in a group chat with everyone else or whatever, you should definitely share that. That's super useful. Thank you. Final question? Yeah. Sometimes you can't. You can try. The best thing is just like stay level-headed, and as soon as it gets a little heated, the first thing that starts happening is like personal insults. Well, you this, you that, you're just a blah blah blah. You're just a man. You're just privileged, whatever. Was like some of the ones for me. Like the important thing is like you don't have to defend yourself. Like that's not what you're there to do. Stay focused on the issue. And if they don't want to argue the issue, it's like, okay, you don't have an argument. And that's been made clear by your behavior in this conversation. You just resorted to personal insults, called me fat or whatever. It's like it's just a clear sign of like a weak argument. And I think it's important to just allow their argument to dissolve because what we know is like they don't stand on any objective truth. It's all subjective. It's all about feelings and emotion. And then usually their feelings and emotions get so boiled up and they either just like flip you off and walk away or say like, I hope you get hit by a bus. Like, that was one of them in Portland. The first time we stood in front of Planned Parenthood, like we're with like my two babies and like this couple walks by who just went in for an abortion and they're like, I hope you guys get hit by a bus. So, yeah, me and my kids here just like offering care for people. It's like really, there's a lot of vitriol. It's like very inflammatory and just you see a lot of evil come out of people. And it became for me not surprising because I realized like we see Jesus like essentially describes like you have murder in your heart. Like murder literally resides in your heart. You have murderous intentions, and whether you think it's murder or not, it's what's there. And so, like whatever kind of crap comes out of your mouth, it's like obviously it's an overflow of what's in your heart. That's why these people need a new heart to be filled with the Holy Spirit. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Thank you, guys. I'm happy to share all this. I'm happy to answer questions. If you do have more questions, I'll hang out for a little while afterwards. And, yeah.